The rope burns on Emma Hartwell's wrists were still fresh when she stumbled into the town square of Wilcox, Arizona, dragged by two men who showed no mercy for a woman accused of theft in the summer of 1878. Her dark hair hung in tangled strands around her face, dirt smudged across her cheeks, and her dress torn at the shoulder where rough hands had grabbed her. The accusations had come swift and brutal. A traveling merchant claimed she had stolen his coin purse, though Emma knew she had never touched it. She had been working as a seamstress in a boarding house, barely scraping together enough to survive since her father died 6 months prior, leaving her alone in this harsh territory with nothing but debts and whispered rumors about her family's supposed dishonesty. Now the crowd gathered like vultures circling prey. Women in their Sunday bonnets whispered behind gloved hands, their eyes hard with judgment. Men crossed their arms and nodded along with the merchant's accusations, their faces set in grim satisfaction at seeing justice supposedly served. The sheriff, a portly man named Daniels who cared more about keeping the peace with wealthy visitors than protecting the vulnerable, stood by with his arms crossed, letting the mob mentality take its course. "String her up to the post," someone shouted from the back of the crowd. "Thief deserves what she gets," another voice called out. Emma's legs trembled beneath her as they hauled her toward the wooden post in the center of the square where criminals were displayed for public shaming. Her heart hammered so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. She opened her mouth to protest her innocence once more, but the words died in her throat when she saw the cold indifference in the eyes surrounding her. They tied her to the post, binding her wrists behind the rough wood. The rope cut into the existing burns, making her gasp with pain. The merchant stepped forward, a smug expression on his fleshy face. "This woman is a thief," he announced loudly. "I demand justice according to the law of this territory." "I did not take anything," Emma managed to say, her voice hoarse from crying. "Please, I am innocent." "Liars always claim innocence," a woman spat from the crowd. Someone threw a rotten tomato that splattered against Emma's shoulder. Another followed, then another. Laughter erupted from portions of the crowd. Shame burned hotter than the Arizona sun beating down on her head. She closed her eyes, praying for this nightmare to end, praying that someone, anyone, would see the truth. That was when she heard the horse. Heavy hoofbeats approached from the north end of the square, steady and deliberate. The crowd's noise began to diminish as people turned to see who dared interrupt their entertainment. Emma opened her eyes and saw him through the blur of tears. He sat astride a massive bay stallion, a man who seemed carved from the mountains themselves. Broad shoulders stretched beneath a worn leather vest that revealed powerful arms tanned dark by years in the sun. His chest was thick with muscle, the kind built from hard labor and harder living. Long brown hair fell past his collar, and a beard covered the lower half of his face, but his eyes were what captured her attention. They were the color of storm clouds, gray and intense, and they swept across the scene with an intelligence that missed nothing. Adam Morrison had come down from his cabin in the Kairikahua Mountains for supplies, a trip he made only once every few months when necessity demanded it. He preferred the solitude of the high country, the company of pine trees and wildlife over the petness and cruelty of civilization. But something had pulled him toward the town square today, some instinct honed by years of survival in the wilderness. He took in the scene with a single glance. A young woman tied to the post, her face streaked with tears, and the remains of thrown vegetables. A crowd of so-called decent people taking pleasure in her suffering. A merchant who had the look of a man who enjoyed his power over others. The sheriff standing by doing nothing. Adam's jaw tightened beneath his beard. He had seen this before in different towns, different circumstances. The strong preying on the weak, the crowd turning vicious when given permission by those in authority. He dismounted in one smooth motion, his boots hitting the dirt with solid authority. The crowd parted instinctively as he walked forward. At 6 feet 4 inches of pure muscle, with a hunting knife on his belt and a rifle still strapped to his saddle, Adam Morrison commanded respect through presence alone. What crime has this woman committed? His voice was deep, roughened by years of sparse conversation, but it carried across the square with undeniable authority. The merchant puffed up his chest. "She is a thief, stole my coin purse this very morning." "Did anyone witness this theft?" Adam asked, his eyes moving across the crowd. Silence greeted his question. The merchant's face reddened. "I do not need witnesses. The purse was in my pocket and then it was gone. She was the only one near me." "That is not evidence," Adam said flatly. "That is assumption. Who are you to question justice?" The sheriff finally spoke up, taking a step forward but not quite approaching the mountain man. Adam turned those gray eyes on the lawman, and something in his gaze made the sheriff stop in his tracks. "I am someone asking for actual proof before a woman is shamed and possibly worse in your town square." "The merchant has made his accusation," the sheriff said, but his voice lacked conviction. "We are within our rights." "You are within your rights to be fools," Adam replied. He turned back to the merchant. "Empty your pockets." "I will not," the merchant sputtered. "How dare you?" Adam took a single step closer. The merchant stumbled backward. "Empty your pockets or I will do it for you." Perhaps it was the cold certainty in Adam's voice, or perhaps it was the recognition that this mountain man would follow through on his promise. But the merchant began pulling items from his various pockets. A handkerchief, a pocket watch, several papers, and then, from a hidden inside pocket of his coat, a leather coin purse. The crowd gasped. The merchant's face went from red to white. "That is not. I mean, I must have missed." "You accused an innocent woman," Adam said, his voice low and dangerous. "You let her be tied up and humiliated for your own mistake or perhaps your own malice." He turned to the sheriff. "Cut her loose." "Now see here," the sheriff began, but Adam was already moving toward Emma. He pulled his knife from his belt, and the crowd murmured nervously, but he simply cut through the ropes binding her to the post with quick, efficient movements. Emma nearly collapsed when the bonds released. Her legs had gone numb from standing in rigid fear. Strong hands caught her before she could fall. Adam steadied her with a grip that was firm but surprisingly gentle. "Can you walk?" he asked, his voice quieter now, meant only for her. Emma looked up into his face and saw no judgment there, only concern. "I think so," she whispered. "Then we are leaving." He kept one hand on her elbow, supporting her weight as her circulation returned in painful tingles. "You cannot just take her," the sheriff protested, but he made no move to stop them. Adam looked back at the lawman with contempt. "I am not taking her. I am helping her leave a place where she was falsely accused and tormented by cowards. If you have an issue with that, you know where to find me. Adam Morrison, up in the Kairakahuas." The name meant something. Emma could see recognition and fear flash across several faces in the crowd. Stories of the mountain man were told in saloons and around campfires. A man who could track anything, survive anywhere, and who had once faced down a group of outlaws single-handedly when they tried to ambush him on a mountain trail. Whether all the stories were true or not, his reputation was enough to keep anyone from challenging him now. He led Emma through the parted crowd toward his horse. She walked on shaking legs, acutely aware of every eye following them, but the jeers and thrown vegetables had stopped. Adam's presence created a protective bubble around her. When they reached his horse, he asked, "Do you have belongings in town? Family?" "No family," Emma said, her voice still unsteady. "I have a room at the boarding house, but I owe rent. My few belongings are there." "Where is this boarding house?" She directed him with nods and gestures, still too overwhelmed to fully process what was happening. This stranger had appeared like an avenging angel and saved her from public torture. Now he was helping her gather her meager possessions as if it were the most natural thing in the world. The boarding house owner, Mrs. Patterson, met them at the door with pinched lips and crossed arms. "I heard what happened in the square. I want her things out of my house." "She owes you rent." Adam asked. "2 weeks' worth, and I will not get it from a thief." "She is not a thief," Adam said with dangerous calm. The merchant found his coin purse in his own pocket as the entire square witnessed. "You are owed $12, Mrs." Patterson blinked, taken aback by his specific knowledge of her rates. "Yes, that is correct." Adam pulled coins from his own pocket and counted them into her palm. "Her debt is paid. Get her belongings." The woman scurried inside. Emma turned to Adam with wide eyes. "You did not have to do that." "I cannot repay you." "I did not ask for repayment," he replied simply. Within minutes, Emma's small trunk sat at their feet, containing everything she owned in the world. A few dresses, her sewing supplies, a Bible that had belonged to her mother, and a daguerreotype of her parents taken years ago. Adam lifted the trunk as if it weighed nothing and secured it to his horse. Then he turned to Emma with a question in his eyes. "I am taking you away from this town. You are not safe here after what happened. Do you have anywhere to go?" Emma's throat tightened. The honest answer was no. She had no relatives, no friends who would risk their reputations to help her, no money to start fresh somewhere else. "I have nothing and nowhere," she admitted, the words bitter with shame. "Then you will come with me," Adam said. "I have a cabin in the mountains. It is not fancy, but it is safe and far from people like those in that square. You can stay until you figure out what you want to do next." "I am a stranger," Emma protested. "Why would you do this for me?" Adam's gray eyes met hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Because what I saw in that square was wrong. Because you needed help and no one else would give it. Because I know what it is like to be alone against the world." Something in his voice told Emma that he spoke from experience, that this mountain man understood isolation and injustice in ways she could only imagine. Against all logic, she trusted him. Perhaps it was desperation, or perhaps it was something deeper, some instinct that recognized safety when it finally appeared. "I will come with you," she said. "Thank you." Adam nodded once, then mounted his horse. He reached down and lifted Emma up behind him with easy strength, settling her on the horse's back. "Hold on to me," he instructed. "The trail to my cabin is long and rough in places." Emma wrapped her arms around his broad torso, feeling the solid muscle beneath the leather vest. The horse started moving, carrying them away from Wilcox, away from shame and false accusations, toward the mountains that rose purple and mysterious in the distance. As the town fell away behind them, Emma rested her cheek against Adam's back and let herself cry quiet tears of relief. His warmth was solid and real, an anchor in a world that had turned cruel and chaotic. He did not comment on her tears, simply kept the horse moving at a steady pace that ate up the miles between civilization and wilderness. The Arizona landscape spread around them in all its harsh beauty. Saguaro cacti stood like sentinels against the blue sky. Desert scrub gave way to grassland as they climbed in elevation, and eventually the first juniper trees appeared, twisted and ancient. The air grew cooler as they ascended, and Emma breathed it in gratefully after the stifling heat of the town. They rode for hours without speaking. The sun tracked across the sky, beginning its descent toward the western horizon. Emma's body ached from the rough treatment she had endured and from the unaccustomed exercise of riding, but she did not complain. This man had saved her when he had no obligation to do so. She would not burden him with complaints. As the sun touched the mountain peaks, painting them gold and crimson, Adam guided the horse off the main trail onto a narrower path that switchbacked up a steep slope. Pine trees grew thicker here, their scent sharp and clean. A creek babbled somewhere nearby and birds called their evening songs. Finally, as twilight settled over the mountains, they emerged into a clearing. A cabin stood against the slope, built from rough-hewn logs with a stone chimney rising from one end. It was simple but well-made, the kind of structure built by a man who knew how to live off the land and valued function over decoration. A small barn stood to one side, and Emma could see a garden plot near the cabin, vegetables growing in neat rows. Chickens scratched in a fenced area, and a goat looked up from grazing to observe the new arrivals with mild interest. Adam dismounted and lifted Emma down. Her legs nearly buckled after the long ride, and again his hands steadied her. "Come inside," he said. "I will tend to the horse and your trunk, then make us some food." The cabin's interior was as simple as its exterior. One large room with a stone fireplace, a table and chairs, a cabinet for dishes and food, and a bed in the corner covered with thick furs. A ladder led to a loft area where Emma could see more storage. Everything was clean and organized, the space of a man who lived deliberately. Adam brought in her trunk and set it near the wall, then busied himself building a fire in the hearth. Emma stood awkwardly, unsure what to do or say. Her entire world had shifted in the course of a single day, and she was still trying to comprehend it all. "Sit," Adam said, gesturing to one of the chairs at the table. "You have had a terrible day. Rest while I cook." Emma sat gratefully and watched as he moved about the cabin with practiced efficiency. He filled a pot with water from a barrel near the door, adding dried beans and meat from a jar. He sliced bread and set it on the table with a crock of butter. His movements were economical but not rushed, the actions of a man comfortable in his solitude. As the fire warmed the cabin, and the smell of cooking food filled the air, Emma felt the tight knot in her chest begin to loosen. For the first time since the accusations had been hurled at her that morning, she felt safe. "I do not even know how to thank you properly," she said softly. "You saved my life today. That crowd, they would have done worse than shame me if you had not stopped them." Adam ladled stew into 2 bowls and brought them to the table before sitting across from her. "You do not need to thank me. What happened to you was wrong. I only did what anyone decent should have done." "But no one else did," Emma pointed out. "The sheriff, the people I thought were my neighbors, they all turned on me without proof. You were the only one who demanded evidence." "People are quick to judge and slow to think," Adam said, his voice carrying a bitter edge. "Especially when someone gives them permission to be cruel." Emma studied his face as she ate. The beard covered much of his expression, but she could see the hardness around his eyes, the way his jaw tensed. "You have experienced something similar," she guessed. Adam was silent for a long moment, his spoon still in his hand. "My father was accused of murder when I was 19, he finally said. "A wealthy rancher's son died in a dispute over water rights, and my father was blamed because he had argued with the family. There was no trial, just a mob and a rope." Emma's heart clenched. "They hanged him." "Yes." "My mother died of grief within a year. I had a younger sister, Sarah. She was 16. Adam's voice went flat, emotionless, but Emma could hear the pain beneath it. "The town turned on us. No one would hire us, sell to us, or speak to us. Sarah got sick that winter and no doctor would come. She died in my arms because I could not save her." "Oh, Adam," Emma whispered, tears filling her eyes. "I am so sorry." After I buried her next to our parents, I left that town and never looked back. I came to these mountains and built this cabin. I learned to survive on my own, to need nothing from people who could turn vicious without warning." He looked up at Emma, and she saw old pain in his gray eyes. "When I saw you in that square today, tied to that post with the crowd baying for your blood, I saw my family. I saw what happens when good people stand by and let evil happen. I could not walk away." Emma reached across the table and placed her hand over his. His hand was rough with calluses, huge compared to her small fingers, but it radiated warmth and strength. "Your family would be proud of what you did today. You saved someone who desperately needed saving." Adam looked down at their joined hands, and something shifted in his expression. He did not pull away. "You are safe here, Emma. I give you my word. You can stay as long as you need to." They finished their meal in companionable silence. Afterward, Adam showed Emma the loft where she could sleep. He had laid out thick furs and blankets to make a comfortable pallet, and he brought up her trunk so she would have her belongings near. "I will sleep down here," he said. "If you need anything in the night, just call out." Emma changed into her nightdress, grateful to be out of the torn and stained dress from that horrible day. She lay down in the loft and listened to Adam moving quietly below, banking the fire and settling onto his own bed. The sounds of the mountain night filtered through the cabin walls. Owls hooted, the creek burbled in the distance, and the wind sighed through the pines. For the first time in months since her father had died and left her alone, Emma felt protected. This stranger, who was no longer a stranger, had given her sanctuary when her own community had turned against her. As she drifted toward sleep, she wondered what the future held, but for now, she was simply grateful to be alive and safe in the mountains with a man who understood suffering and chose to prevent it when he could. The days that followed established a rhythm that surprised Emma with its comfort. She woke each morning to find Adam already up, tending to his animals or working in his garden. She would dress and come down from the loft to help prepare breakfast, and they would eat together as the sun rose over the mountains. Adam was a man of few words, but Emma discovered that his silence was not coldness. He simply thought carefully before speaking, and when he did talk, his words carried weight. He told her about the mountains, pointing out the different plants and their uses. He showed her how to recognize animal tracks and read the weather in the clouds. In turn, Emma made herself useful. She mended his clothes, which had suffered from bachelor neglect. She cooked meals more varied than his usual fare, using the vegetables from his garden and the spices she found in his cabinet. She cleaned and organized, bringing a woman's touch to the rough cabin without fundamentally changing its character. 3 days after her arrival, as Emma washed dishes from their midday meal, she asked the question that had been on her mind. "Do you ever go back to town, see other people?" Adam was repairing a bridle, his large hands surprisingly deft with the leather work. "I go to Wilcox for supplies every few months. Sometimes I trade furs or meet with ranchers who live at the base of the mountains, but I prefer solitude." "Does it not get lonely?" Emma asked softly. He looked up at her, his gray eyes thoughtful. "It did at first. After Sarah died, I wanted to be alone with my grief. But over the years, I made peace with the solitude. The mountains do not judge or betray. They are honest in their dangers and their beauties." "But you miss human connection," Emma guessed, "or you would not have helped me." A slight smile tugged at Adam's mouth beneath his beard. "Perhaps you are right. I did not realize I missed it until I had it again." The comment made Emma's heart skip in a way she did not fully understand. She turned back to her dishes to hide her sudden confusion. She had been so focused on her immediate survival that she had not let herself think about the fact that she was living alone with a man, unchaperoned, in circumstances that would scandalize any proper society. But there was nothing improper in Adam's behavior. He treated her with respect and courtesy, never overstepping boundaries, never making her feel unsafe. If anything, his protectiveness reminded her of how her father had been before illness took him. Yet there was something else too, something she noticed in the way her pulse quickened when Adam came near, or how her eyes followed him as he worked around the cabin. He was undeniably handsome beneath that rugged exterior, and his strength was not just physical but moral. He was the kind of man women dreamed about, honorable and capable. Emma shook her head at her own foolishness. She was a woman with nothing, living on charity. Adam had saved her out of compassion, not attraction. She needed to focus on figuring out her future, not spinning romantic fantasies about her rescuer. That evening, as they sat by the fire after dinner, Adam surprised her by asking about her past. "You said your father died. What happened to him?" Emma stared into the flames, remembering. "He was a carpenter, a good one, but he fell from a roof while working on a barn repair. The fall broke his back. He lingered for 3 months before infection took him. We spent everything we had on doctors and medicine, and when he died, I was left with debts and no way to pay them." "That is how you ended up at the boarding house, working as a seamstress," Adam said. "Yes. I sold our house to pay the debts, took the room at Mrs. Patterson's place, and tried to make a living with my sewing. But there was not much call for it in Wilcox, and the little I earned barely covered my rent and food." Emma's voice caught. "That merchant, he bumped into me on the street that morning. I thought nothing of it, just apologized and went on my way. An hour later, he was accusing me of theft." "Do you think he truly believed you stole from him, or was it deliberate?" Adam asked. Emma had wondered the same thing. "I do not know. Part of me thinks he genuinely misplaced his purse and assumed the worst. But another part wonders if he saw an opportunity to feel important by accusing someone vulnerable. Either way, he was willing to see you suffer for his mistake," Adam said, his voice hard. "That tells you the measure of the man." They sat in silence for a while, watching the fire. Then Adam spoke again, his tone careful. "You are welcome to stay here as long as you wish, but I know this is not the life you planned. If you want to go to another town, start fresh somewhere, I will help you get established. I have some money saved, and I can make sure you get safely wherever you want to go." Emma's chest tightened at the offer. Part of her knew it was the sensible thing to do. She could not hide in the mountains forever, living on Adam's charity. But the thought of leaving this cabin, leaving him, filled her with unexpected sadness. "I do not want to burden you," she said softly. "You have already done so much." "You are not a burden," Adam replied firmly. "You help with the work and—" He paused, seeming to struggle for words. "I find I enjoy the company. The cabin feels different with you in it. Better." Emma looked up at him, and their eyes met across the firelight. Something passed between them, an awareness that had been building since that first day. Adam's expression shifted, softened, and Emma felt heat that had nothing to do with the fire spread through her. "I like being here," she admitted. "I feel safer than I have in a long time, but I do not want you to feel obligated to keep me." "What if it is not obligation?" Adam asked quietly. "What if I want you to stay?" Emma's breath caught. "Why?" Adam stood and moved to crouch in front of her chair, bringing them to eye level. This close, she could see the depths in his gray eyes, could smell the pine and leather scent that clung to him. "Because you are brave and kind. Because you have been through suffering, but it has not made you cruel. Because when I look at you, I see someone worth knowing, worth protecting." He hesitated, then added, "Worth caring about." "Adam," Emma whispered, her heart pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. "I am not good with words," he said, his rough voice even rougher with emotion. "I have lived alone too long. But I know that since you came here, I wake up looking forward to the day. I listen for your voice, watch for your smile. I have been alone for 8 years by choice, but now I think maybe I was just waiting. Waiting for what? Emma asked, though she thought she knew. Waiting for you. Emma reached out and touched his bearded cheek, feeling the softness of the hair and the strength of the jaw beneath. I was so frightened in that town square. I thought my life was over. Then you appeared like something out of a story and everything changed. You did not just save my life, Adam. You gave me hope again. Adam covered her hand with his own, pressing it against his face. I spent 8 years telling myself I was better off alone, that people could not be trusted. Then I saw you and all I could think was that I had to protect you, had to know you were safe. It was not rational or planned. It just was. Like it was meant to be, Emma suggested softly. Yes, Adam agreed. Like it was meant to be. He leaned forward slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted, but Emma did not want to pull away. She met him halfway, and when their lips touched, it felt like coming home. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, two people learning each other. Then it deepened, and Emma felt years of loneliness on both sides pouring into that connection. When they finally parted, both were breathing hard. Adam rested his forehead against Emma's, his hands cradling her face with infinite care. "Stay with me," he said. "Not as a guest or someone I rescued. Stay as my partner, my companion. Stay because you want to, because you feel what I feel." "I do feel it," Emma confessed. "I was trying not to because I thought you were just being kind. But it is more than gratitude, Adam. When I am with you, I feel whole again. I feel like myself, like the woman I was before everything went wrong." "Then stay," he repeated. "We will figure out the rest together." Emma nodded, tears of joy sliding down her cheeks. "I will stay, for as long as you want me." "Forever then," Adam said, and kissed her again. The next weeks passed in a haze of happiness that Emma had never expected to experience. She and Adam settled into their new relationship with surprising ease. They worked side by side during the days, their conversations growing deeper and more comfortable. In the evenings, they would sit together by the fire, sometimes talking, sometimes simply enjoying each other's presence. Adam was a thoughtful partner, attentive to Emma's needs and feelings. He taught her how to ride his horse, patient with her initial nervousness. He showed her the secret places in the mountains, the hidden meadows full of wildflowers and the clear pools where the creek widened. Emma discovered sides of Adam she had not seen in those first days. He had a quiet sense of humor, dry observations that made her laugh unexpectedly. He was well read, with a small collection of books that he treasured and shared with her. On Sundays, he would read aloud from the Bible, his deep voice giving weight to the familiar passages. One month after Emma arrived at the cabin, Adam rode down to the nearest ranch to trade some furs. He returned with supplies and a serious expression on his face. Emma met him at the door, concern tightening her stomach. "What is wrong?" she asked as he unloaded his saddlebags. "Nothing is wrong exactly," Adam said, "but there is talk in town about you and me." Emma felt her face flush. "What kind of talk?" "The kind you would expect. A man and a woman living alone together without being married. The minister is apparently quite vocal about the scandal of it." Adam set down the last bag and turned to face her fully. "I do not care what they think or say, but I care about your reputation, about how this might affect you." "My reputation was already ruined when they tied me to that post," Emma said bitterly. "That was false accusation. This is different." Adam took her hands in his. "Emma, I do not want you to be the subject of gossip or judgment because of me, so I have been thinking about a solution." Emma's heart began to race. "What solution?" Adam took a deep breath, and for the first time since she had known him, he looked nervous. "Marry me, not because of what people say, though that would silence the gossips. Marry me because I love you. Because I cannot imagine my life without you in it now. Because when I think about the future, you are in every vision of it." Emma felt tears spring to her eyes. "You love me, with everything I am," Adam said simply. "I know it has only been a month, but I am certain. I have had 8 years of solitude to know my own mind. I know what I want, and I want you. As my wife, my partner, my companion for all the days I have left." "Yes," Emma said through her tears. "Yes, I will marry you. I love you too, Adam. You saved me in every way a person can be saved." Adam pulled her into his arms, holding her tight against his broad chest. Emma wrapped her arms around his waist and breathed in the scent of him, feeling the steady beat of his heart. This man, this strong and gentle and brave man, wanted to spend his life with her. They were married 3 weeks later in a small ceremony at the cabin. Adam had gone to town and returned with a traveling preacher who was passing through the territory. The man was old and kind, asking no questions about their circumstances, simply performing the ceremony that joined their lives legally and spiritually. Emma wore her best dress, mended and cleaned until it looked nearly new. Adam had trimmed his beard and hair, looking more civilized than she had yet seen him, though no less powerful. They spoke their vows in front of the cabin, with the mountains as their witnesses and the preacher's gentle voice guiding them through the promises. When Adam slipped a simple gold band onto Emma's finger, she gasped. "Where did you get this?" "It was my mother's," Adam said softly. "The only thing I kept from my old life. I want you to have it, to know that you are my family now." Emma kissed him with tears streaming down her face, and the preacher chuckled indulgently. "You may kiss your bride," he said, "though it seems you have already started." That night, Emma moved her belongings from the loft down to the main bed. Adam had given her privacy to prepare, waiting outside until she called him in. When he entered the cabin, he found her sitting on the edge of the bed, nervous and hopeful and beautiful in the lamplight. "Are you certain?" he asked gently. "We can wait if you are not ready." "I am certain," Emma said. "I want to be your wife in every way." Adam came to her slowly, carefully, treating her like something precious. He had been alone for so long, and Emma had never been with a man, but together they discovered the joy and intimacy of marriage. Adam was patient and tender, guiding Emma through new experiences with care and love. When they finally came together as husband and wife, it was with a rightness that confirmed what they both already knew. They were meant for each other. Afterward, as they lay tangled together in the furs, Adam stroked Emma's hair and spoke into the darkness. "I never thought I would have this. A wife, a partner, love. I had resigned myself to solitude. I never thought I would have safety or happiness again," Emma replied. "Then you stepped between me and that crowd, and my whole world changed." "Our whole world changed," Adam corrected, kissing the top of her head. "We saved each other." The months that followed were the happiest of Emma's life. She and Adam fell into the rhythms of married life with ease. They worked together, maintaining the cabin and the small farm. Emma expanded the garden, and Adam built her a proper chicken coop. They talked about the future, about perhaps getting a cow or a few pigs, about building an addition to the cabin. When winter came, bringing snow to the mountains, they spent long evenings by the fire. Adam taught Emma to carve wood, and she made him new shirts from fabric he had brought back from town. They read to each other from his books and from the Bible. They made love with increasing passion and intimacy, learning each other's bodies and desires. In the spring, Emma discovered she was pregnant. She had suspected for a few weeks but waited until she was certain before telling Adam. She chose a morning when the wildflowers were blooming in the meadow, and the world felt full of new life. "I have something to tell you," she said as they worked together in the garden. Adam looked up from the row he was planting, his eyes immediately focusing on her with concern. "What is it?" "Are you unwell?" "No, I am very well," Emma said, unable to keep the smile from her face. "We are going to have a baby." Adam went completely still. Then he dropped the seeds he was holding and crossed to her in 3 long strides, sweeping her up in his arms despite her laughing protests. "A baby." "Truly, truly," Emma confirmed, her arms around his neck. "In the fall, probably early October." Adam set her down carefully as if she might break and placed his large hand gently on her still flat stomach. "A child," he said wonderingly. "Our child. Are you happy?" Emma asked, though she could see the answer in his face. "Happy does not begin to cover it," Adam said. "I thought my family was lost forever. Now I have you, and soon we will have a baby. You have given me everything, Emma." "We have given each other everything," she corrected, covering his hand with her own. Adam became even more protective during Emma's pregnancy, if that was possible. He insisted she not lift heavy things or overexert herself. He brought her wildflowers and cooked her favorite meals. When she had morning sickness, he held her hair and brought her water, never complaining. As summer turned to fall and Emma's belly swelled with their growing child, Adam built a cradle from pine wood, sanding it smooth and carving small mountain flowers into the headboard. Emma sewed tiny clothes and blankets, her heart full of anticipation. In early October, as the aspens turned gold on the mountainsides, Emma's labor began. Adam had arranged weeks earlier for a midwife from the nearest ranch to come stay with them as Emma's time approached, and the older woman proved invaluable during the long hours of labor. Adam refused to leave Emma's side, despite the midwife's suggestion that he wait outside. He held Emma's hand, wiped her forehead, and spoke words of encouragement as she worked to bring their child into the world. Finally, as the sun set behind the mountains, a baby's cry filled the cabin. The midwife laughed with delight. "You have a son, and he has a fine set of lungs." Adam's hands shook as the midwife placed the baby in his arms. He stared down at the tiny red face, the miniature fingers curling and uncurling with an expression of absolute awe. "A son," he whispered. "Let his mama see him," the midwife urged gently. Adam carefully placed the baby in Emma's waiting arms. She looked down at their son and felt her heart expand in ways she had not known were possible. He had a dusting of dark hair and his father's gray eyes, and he was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. "What will you name him?" the midwife asked as she cleaned up. Emma and Adam looked at each other. They had discussed names but never settled on one. Now, looking at their son, Emma knew. "James," she said, "after my father, James Morrison." "James," Adam repeated, testing the name. He smiled. "It is perfect." The midwife stayed for a week, making sure both Emma and the baby were healthy before she returned to the ranch. Once they were alone, Adam and Emma settled into the exhausting and wonderful reality of new parenthood. Adam was a devoted father, changing James's nappies without complaint and walking the floor with him during fussy nights. Emma nursed their son and watched her husband become even more gentle and patient than she had thought possible. Who would have guessed? She said one night as Adam rocked James to sleep, "The fierce mountain man is actually a tender father." "I am only fierce when protecting what is mine," Adam replied softly, looking down at his sleeping son. "And you too are mine to protect always." The years passed in a blur of happiness and hard work. James grew from a baby into a toddler, then a boy who followed his father everywhere, learning to track animals and identify plants. He had Adam's strength and Emma's kind heart, and watching him grow was a constant source of joy. When James was 3, Emma gave birth to a daughter they named Rose, for the wild roses that grew in the mountain meadows. She had Emma's dark hair and a smile that could light up the cabin. 2 years later, another son arrived, Samuel, who was quieter than his siblings but equally loved. The cabin had been expanded over the years to accommodate their growing family. Adam built additional rooms and a larger porch where the children could play. The farm expanded too, with more animals and a larger garden. They were largely self-sufficient, needing to go to town only occasionally for supplies they could not make themselves. When James turned 10, Adam began taking him on longer trips into the mountains, teaching him survival skills and the ways of the wilderness. Emma watched them go with a mixture of pride and worry, though she never doubted Adam's ability to keep their son safe. One evening, after the children were asleep, Emma sat with Adam on the porch, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. "Taking me in that day, changing your whole life." Adam pulled her close against his side, his arms solid and warm around her shoulders. "Not for a single moment. You and our children are the best things that ever happened to me. I was surviving before you, Emma. Now I am living." "I think about that day sometimes," Emma admitted. "How different everything would be if you had not been there, if you had not cared enough to stop." "I think I was meant to be there," Adam said. "All those years alone, all that pain and loss, it led me to that exact moment when you needed someone. And you gave me back everything I had lost. Family, love, purpose beyond simple survival." Emma turned in his arms to look up at his face, still handsome despite the silver threading through his hair and beard. "I love you, Adam Morrison, more with every passing year. And I love you, Emma Morrison. You are my heart, my home, my everything." They kissed as the stars wheeled overhead, two people who had found each other in the midst of cruelty and built a life full of love and meaning. As their children grew, Adam and Emma made sure they understood the importance of standing up against injustice. They told the story of how they met, not shying away from the cruelty Emma had faced or the courage it took for Adam to intervene. They taught their children that strength was not just physical but moral, and that true bravery meant protecting those who could not protect themselves. James, as the oldest, took these lessons deeply to heart. At 15, he intervened when he saw a group of boys tormenting a younger child during a rare trip to town. He stood between the bullies and their victim, his father's son in both build and spirit, and refused to back down until they left. When Adam heard about it, he pulled James aside. "You did well today," he said simply, "but you must always be careful. Standing up for others can be dangerous." "You taught me it is worth the danger," James replied. "You stood up for Mama when no one else would. I want to be like you." Adam's eyes grew bright with emotion. "You are already like me, son. Better than me because you learned these lessons early. Just promise me you will be smart as well as brave." "I promise," James said, and Adam embraced him, proud of the man his son was becoming. Rose, at 12, showed her own form of courage by befriending the daughter of a Chinese railroad worker during another town visit. The girl was being shunned by other children, but Rose sat with her and shared her lunch, ignoring the disapproving stares of some adults. Emma praised her when she heard, "You have a good heart, my darling. Never let anyone make you ashamed of kindness." Samuel, at 10, was the quiet observer of the family, but he had inherited his father's ability to read situations and his mother's empathy. He would often notice when someone was upset and find small ways to comfort them, bringing his mother wildflowers when she seemed sad or sitting quietly with his father when Adam had one of his rare dark moods. As the children grew into young adults, Adam and Emma watched with pride as they prepared to make their own ways in the world. James spoke of becoming a lawman, someone who could protect people the way his father had protected his mother. Rose wanted to be a teacher, to help children learn and grow. Samuel thought he might become a doctor, drawn to the idea of healing. "They are going to leave us," Emma said one night, a touch of sadness in her voice as she thought about the future. "They will make their own paths," Adam agreed, "but they will always come home. We have given them roots as well as wings." And he was right. Though the children eventually left the mountain cabin to pursue their dreams, they returned often, bringing grandchildren for Adam and Emma to dote on. James became a respected sheriff in a town 2 days' ride away, known for his fairness and his refusal to let mobs dictate justice. Rose opened a school that accepted all children regardless of their background. Samuel went east to study medicine and returned to practice in the territory, treating everyone who needed care. The cabin in the mountains remained the center of the Morrison family, the place where everyone gathered for holidays and celebrations. Adam and Emma grew old together there, their hair turning silver, their bodies slowing, but their love never diminishing. On their 30th wedding anniversary, their children and grandchildren gathered for a celebration. The cabin was full of laughter and love. 3 generations united by the choice one man had made to stand between an innocent woman and an angry crowd. That evening, after everyone had gone to sleep in various corners of the expanded cabin and in tents outside, Adam and Emma slipped away to sit on the porch where they had spent so many evenings over the years. 30 years, Emma marveled, holding Adam's weathered hand in her own. "Sometimes it feels like yesterday that you cut me free from that post. Other times it feels like we have always been together." "Both are true," Adam said. "The day I met you changed everything, but the life we built feels as natural as breathing. Do you remember what you said that night?" "That you thought maybe you had been waiting for me?" Emma asked. "I remember every word of that night," Adam confirmed. "And I was right. I was waiting for you even when I did not know it. You were worth every lonely year that came before." Emma leaned her head on Adam's shoulder, feeling the solid strength still present in his body despite his age. "I was thinking today about all the good that came from that terrible day. Our children, our grandchildren, all the lives they are touching with the values we taught them. That merchant's false accusation led to all of this. Evil can lead to good when good people refuse to let it win," Adam said. "We chose to build something beautiful out of ugliness. That is what I am most proud of." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge in the familiar patterns they had observed together for 3 decades. Somewhere inside the cabin, a baby cried and was quickly soothed. The sounds of family surrounded them, the legacy of their love. "When I am gone," Adam said quietly, "I want you to know that every day with you was a gift. You took a broken man living alone on a mountain and made him whole again." "We are not talking about being gone," Emma said firmly. "We have many years left together." Adam smiled and kissed the top of her head. "Many years," he agreed. "But whenever that time comes for either of us, I want you to know. You were and are and always will be the love of my life, the best decision I ever made, the reason everything that came before made sense." "And you are my hero, my husband, my home," Emma replied. "The man who saw me when I was invisible, who stood for me when everyone else looked away, who loved me when I had nothing to offer but myself." "You offered everything," Adam corrected. "Your heart, your strength, your hope. You made this cabin a home. You gave me family and purpose and joy. That is not nothing, Emma. That is everything." They held each other as the night deepened, 2 people who had found each other against all odds and built a life that would echo through generations. Inside the cabin, their children slept peacefully, and their grandchildren dreamed innocent dreams, all of them existing because one man had chosen compassion over indifference on a hot day in Wilcox, Arizona, in the summer of 1878. As they finally made their way to bed, Emma paused to look around the cabin. She saw the cradle Adam had carved, now used for grandchildren. She saw the table where they had shared countless meals, the fireplace that had warmed them through many winters, the bed where they had loved and comforted each other through all the joys and sorrows of 3 decades. "We did well," she said softly. "We did better than well," Adam replied, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "We did magnificently." And as they climbed into bed together, still fitting together perfectly after all these years, both of them knew it was true. From shame and injustice, they had built love and family. From loneliness and loss, they had created belonging and joy. From a single act of courage in a town square, they had grown a legacy that would endure long after they were gone. The mountain man who had lived alone for 8 years and the woman who had been falsely accused had become Adam and Emma Morrison, patriarch and matriarch of a family that valued justice, compassion, and love above all else. And every member of that family, down through the generations, would know the story of how it all began, with a man who refused to let a crowd destroy an innocent woman and instead gave her his hand, his home, and eventually his heart. Years continued to pass in the gentle rhythm that Emma and Adam had established. They watched their grandchildren grow, celebrated marriages, and eventually welcomed great-grandchildren. The cabin became legendary in the territory, a symbol of enduring love and the importance of standing up for what was right. Adam remained strong well into his 60s, still capable of working the land and taking hunting trips into the mountains he loved. But eventually age caught up with him, as it does with all men. His hair turned fully white, his steps slowed, and his hands grew stiff from decades of hard work. Emma aged alongside him, her dark hair silvering, her face lined but still beautiful to Adam. Her hands, which had sewn countless garments and held countless babies, developed arthritis, but she never complained. They cared for each other with the same devotion they had shown from the beginning. On a crisp autumn evening, when Adam was 68 and Emma 65, they sat together on the porch watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of gold and purple. It was the same view they had enjoyed for 40 years, and it never grew old. "I have been thinking about that day," Adam said suddenly. "Which day?" Emma asked, though she suspected she knew. "The day in the town square. I have wondered sometimes what would have happened if I had not gone to town that day, if I had stayed in the mountains." Emma took his hand, lacing their fingers together as she had done thousands of times before. "But you did go to town. You were meant to be there. Do you ever regret it?" Adam asked. "The life you could have had if things had been different. You could have gone to a city, found a refined gentleman, had an easier life." Emma laughed softly. "Adam Morrison, after 40 years of marriage, you still doubt. I regret nothing except the cruelty of that day, and even that I cannot fully regret because it brought us together. You gave me the life I was meant to have." Adam squeezed her hand gently. "I just want you to know that I see it, Emma. I see everything you gave up to be with me. The society you could have had, the comforts, the easier path. You see wrong, my love," Emma said firmly. "I gave up nothing but pain and loneliness. What I gained was everything. A husband who loves me, children who honor us, grandchildren who fill my heart with joy, and a home that has sheltered us through every season of life. Show me the refined gentleman who could have given me that." Adam pulled her close, and she rested her head on his shoulder as she had done countless times over the decades. They sat in peaceful silence until the stars emerged, each one a witness to their enduring love. When Adam was 72, He fell ill during the winter. It started as a cough that would not clear, and despite Samuel's best medical efforts, it settled deep in his chest. Emma nursed him devotedly, just as he had cared for her through various illnesses over the years. Their children gathered at the cabin, knowing their father's strength was finally waning. James, now a middle-aged man himself with silver in his hair, sat by his father's bed and held his hand. "You taught me everything that matters, Pa," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "How to be strong and gentle, brave and kind. How to stand up for what is right no matter the cost." "You learned well, son," Adam replied, his voice weak but clear. "You make me proud every day." Rose brought her children to say goodbye to their grandfather, and Adam blessed each one with words of wisdom and love. Samuel checked his father's condition repeatedly, frustrated by his inability to fix what age and illness had wrought. "Some things are beyond medicine, son," Adam told him gently. "I have had a long and good life. Do not grieve that it ends. Celebrate that it was." But it was the time alone with Emma that Adam treasured most in those final days. She rarely left his side, sleeping in a chair next to the bed, holding his hand through the long nights. "I am not afraid," Adam told her one evening as lamplight flickered across the cabin walls. "I have lived fully. I have loved deeply. I have no regrets." "I am afraid," Emma admitted, tears sliding down her weathered cheeks. "I have never known life without you, not really. The life before you barely counts. You are strong, Emma. You always have been. You survived false accusation, public shame, and starting over with nothing. You will survive this too." Adam raised her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. "But I hope it is many years before you have to join me. Our grandchildren and great-grandchildren need you." "What I need is you," Emma whispered. "You will always have me," Adam promised. "Every time you look at our children and see my eyes looking back. Every time you sit on the porch and remember our evenings together. Every time you feel the mountain wind and know I loved this place because it brought me to you. I will be there, Emma. Always." Adam Morrison died peacefully 3 days later, with Emma holding his hand and their children surrounding the bed. His last words were, "I love you," directed at Emma, and his last expression was a smile. The funeral brought people from across the territory. Former criminals whose lives James had redirected rather than destroyed. Students Rose had taught who had gone on to do great things. Patients Samuel had healed. All of them came to pay respects to a man who had lived according to his principles and raised a family that embodied those same values. Emma stood straight and dry-eyed through the service, though everyone knew her grief ran deeper than tears could express. They buried Adam on a hillside overlooking the cabin, beneath a pine tree where wildflowers would bloom each spring. In the weeks that followed, Emma's children worried about her. She seemed diminished without Adam, quieter and more withdrawn. But slowly, she began to emerge from her grief, not forgetting but learning to carry her loss while still living. She remained in the cabin, refusing all suggestions that she move to town to live with one of her children. "This is my home," she said firmly. "Your father and I built this life together, and I will honor it by staying." James visited weekly, bringing supplies and making sure his mother had everything she needed. Rose came with her daughters to help with cleaning and cooking. Samuel checked on her health regularly. Emma appreciated their care but insisted on maintaining her independence. She kept the cabin exactly as it had been when Adam was alive, finding comfort in the familiar surroundings. She spoke to him often, telling him about the grandchildren and great-grandchildren, about the changes in the territory, about her days. 2 years after Adam's death, Emma was sitting on the porch when a young woman approached the cabin leading a tired horse. She was dusty from travel, her dress torn, and she had the look of someone running from trouble. Emma stood slowly, her aging joints protesting, and studied the girl. She saw fear in her eyes and desperation in something else. Hope, perhaps, or the last remnants of it. "Are you Emma Morrison?" the young woman asked, her voice shaking. "I am," Emma confirmed. "I heard stories about you and your husband, about how he saved you when no one else would. I did not know where else to go." The girl's composure cracked and tears began to flow. "Please, I need help. They are going to hurt me, and I have done nothing wrong." Emma saw herself in that frightened face, remembered the terror of being alone against the world. She saw what Adam would do if he were still here, and she knew what she had to do. "Come inside, child," Emma said gently, putting an arm around the trembling girl. "You are safe now. Tell me everything." As she led the young woman into the cabin and began to hear her story of false accusations and persecution, Emma felt Adam's presence as clearly as if he stood beside her. They had built a legacy of standing against injustice, of protecting the vulnerable, of choosing compassion over indifference. And that legacy would continue, passed down through generations, all because a mountain man had once seen a woman shamed in a town square and chose to stand between her and the crowd. Emma Morrison lived to be 82 years old, active and sharp-minded until the end. She helped countless people over the years, offering sanctuary and support to those who had nowhere else to turn. She watched her grandchildren have children of their own, and she lived to hold 2 great-great-grandchildren. When she finally passed away peacefully in her sleep, she was buried next to Adam on the hillside, their graves marked by simple stones that bore their names and a single inscription. They stood for love and justice. The cabin remained in the Morrison family, passed down through the generations as a reminder of where they came from and what they stood for. And every Morrison child learned the story of their great-great-grandparents, the mountain man and the woman he saved, who built a legacy of love that endured long after they were gone. In the end, what began with cruelty in a town square in Wilcox, Arizona, in 1878, became a multi-generational testament to the power of courage, compassion, and love. Adam Morrison's choice to stand between Emma and the crowd did not just save one woman. It created ripples that spread outward, touching hundreds of lives across the decades, and somewhere in the mountains, where wildflowers still bloom each spring and the wind still sighs through the pines, 2 souls rest together, their love story complete, their legacy eternal.